Welcome back, everyone. Another episode of Coffee with the Commish. As promised this morning in the NBA player props video, just wanted to take the opportunity, go through a couple of individual games this evening, approach them more from a sides and a totals perspective, and look at the individual matchups to help give you guys some insight into how to bet sides and totals, if that's something that you want to take advantage of a little bit more, especially with those games being on national TV. So we already did the Celtics and the Cavs, the 7:30 game tonight on ESPN. I'm bringing my guy back, my guy Joe back on, and we're going to take a look at the nightcap as well in that ESPN doubleheader. We're going to take a look at the Pelicans and the Trailblazers. Trailblazers favored by 2 points, over under set at 233 total points. But without further ado, let me bring in Joe. Appreciate you coming back, man.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys haven't checked out the Celtics and the Cavs video, just to give you a quick brief on Joe, one of the sharpest basketball minds that I know personally. He's not the biggest name in the sports betting space, but he's worked with Holy Cross University. He's worked in and helped them with their analytics. He helped them implement an entire playbook. He's coached a number of basketball players as a shooting coach, helping them with their mechanics and things of that nature. So definitely a sharp basketball mind, and here to help us walk through another ESPN NBA matchup. So tell me, Joe, what are you looking at tonight? Two teams, not the creme de la creme of the NBA landscape, of course, especially with both teams being a little bit shorthanded, but there's still some interesting things to take note of here. What are you looking at?
Yeah, totally. So the first thing that I'm looking at is Portland's lost 3 out of their last 5 games. New Orleans lost 4 out of their last 5. So it's not the most glamorous matchup that we really want to see. You see people like Larry Nance, Jose Alvarado, Josh Richardson, Jonas Valanciunas, they're all out. Anthony Simons, Yusuf Nurkic, they're both out too. So, kind of going to be a wacky matchup this tonight. So Portland is 12th in points per game. New Orleans is 15th. They're both middle of the run. Portland's 20th in defensive rating. New Orleans is 19th. So these are very similar teams, both just middle of the pack. But the key thing that I want to focus on is the Damian Lillard versus CJ McCollum matchup. So obviously Damian Lillard had the 71-point game 2 games ago, but don't let it cloud your judgment. Just last game, he had 25 points. I believe it was his lowest. It was his lowest total for the season. So just kind of be wary with that. CJ McCollum, he's an average defender, averaging 17 points per game in the last 5 games. So kind of in a little bit of a rut. So definitely an interesting matchup there. They're both not great defenders, but they're both very good at ISO scores. So there's that. And then there's the playoff implications for Portland. Portland's sitting at the 11th seed right now. They're half a game behind New Orleans. So it's definitely going to be an interesting game for Portland being at home, having these playoff implications on the line, and New Orleans not being that great on the road as of late. So,
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, these are two rather lackluster teams, especially with Zion Williamson out of the lineup for the Pelicans. It's been a huge deal for New Orleans. It was one of the things that made New Orleans so tough to beat early in the season. They were 17-12 with Williamson in the lineup before he went down. They are 13-20 in his absence in those 33 games. You can see on both ends of the floor, they've regressed pretty sharply. And I'll bring up a tool here. It's a great tool. I'll just show you guys how to use it really quick, because this is one of the primary ways that I do attack sides and totals. Cleaning the Glass. It's a great website. Helps you look at some more nuanced numbers from a percentiles perspective, so you can see how teams are doing in relation to their peers, meaning other teams. You can see that when Zion Williamson has been on the floor this season, you put him on court right here in the filter. The Pelicans have been outstanding, outscoring teams by 7.8 points per 100 possessions. They are 82nd percentile in offensive efficiency, 87th percentile in defensive efficiency, with the 100 percentile, of course, being the high end of that scale, being the best end of that scale, and the first percentile being the worst. So you can see very, very strong when Williamson is on the floor, but when you take Williamson off of the floor, it has been a completely different story. They are worse than league average in both offensive and defensive efficiency, which you'll see in a second here as soon as this loads. 33rd percentile in offensive efficiency, 45th percentile in defensive efficiency, which comes out to a negative net rating. And what have we seen since Williamson has been out. The Pelicans, their last 14 road games are 3-11. They rank 25th out of 30 teams in net rating in that span. And if you really want to take a deeper dive and you want to see, like who has Houston beat, right, in their 3 wins, we can pull that up for you as well. And you can see January 2nd, this is the last game that Williamson played in right here. After that, on the road, let's take a look. They beat the Pistons, they have beaten the Wizards, and they have beaten the Oklahoma City Thunder. So not the best teams in the NBA. And if you transition here and you go take a look at the Portland Trailblazers and see what they've been doing on their home floor, they've been significantly better at home despite their defensive efficiencies. As of late, you can see wins against some of the better teams in the NBA. Not great teams, of course, but some more competitive teams. The new look Lakers, they beat them the other night. They beat Golden State. They've beaten Washington, Memphis, Atlanta. So some wins in there that give you some confidence that Portland is perhaps in better shape going into a matchup like this. Joe, I want to ask you on the player prop perspective before we give people our look on the side in this game. You mentioned Lillard. You mentioned Ingram. Lillard sitting at 34.5 most places for his over under on his points, and then Ingram's at over under 25.5. Do you have thoughts on either one of them if people are looking to attack a player prop in this spot?
Yeah, so the only issue that Brandon Ingram's really going to have tonight is Matisse Thybulle. Obviously, Matisse Thybulle is a very good defender. That's why Portland picked him up from Philly. I do like Ingram over 25.5 points tonight because he averages more points per game on the road. He shoots the ball a lot, to put it lightly. He shoots the ball a lot, even if it doesn't really help their team that much. So I do like him over 25.5. I mean, he has to carry the offensive load. It's really the CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram show for the time being until Zion's coming back. Then thinking about Damian Lillard at 34.5, it's really hard to bet on because he just did have his 71-point game. He's been covering, but I'm not really sold on it. It's a tough one to say, but I think I'm gonna have to take the under on this one just because it's such a high number. You don't really see that much. I've got to take the under on him.
Yeah, you mentioned it's tough. It's definitely tough, right? You look since January 8th, and we're on NBA.com right here. You can see Lillard leading the NBA, averaging 38.7 points per game, and of course that is skewed a little bit by that 71-point performance, but not skewed enough to account for a 6-point differential between him and Embiid, who is second in the league in that span and scoring at 32.3 a night. You look at the field goal attempts per night. Also, another reason that it's tough to take the under in this spot, just because second in the league, averaging over 22 shot attempts per game. But you're right, man. It is a difficult number to hit on a consistent basis, and as you can see, he's only got a 40% hit rate to the over in that spot for the season. And if you put the filter on and you look at the home games, even then you still only get to 50%, which is still a tough sell on the betting market. So I think that's tough. I personally, I like the Ingram over 25.5 a little bit more. Like you mentioned, Ingram averaging more points per game on the road this season than he is at home. It's been that way the last couple of years of his career as well. Consistently been a little bit better of a performer away. The other thing with Ingram is, man, he has just been attempting a ton of field goal attempts as of late. Since January 25th, when he came back, he's just been a monster in terms of volume. And we can bring back up his game log right here, and you can see during the month of February, averaged 21.6 shot attempts per game. Only 4 guys in the NBA averaging more shot attempts per game than him since he came back in the lineup. It really has been the CJ and Brandon show without Zion on the floor this season. So that over 25.5, I think is definitely worth a look. I won't be on that one personally, but I do like the look. Anything else in this matchup? I mean, like side, total, anything that sticks out to you?
Yeah, the other thing is the total is 233, and it's hard to tell whether or not both teams are going to be able to score a bunch of points. Obviously, they're both not great defensive teams, but it's just tough to say. New Orleans, they've been abysmal on the offensive side. Portland's without Anthony Simons or Yusuf Nurkic. They both took blows. It's really hard to say. If I had to put money on it, I think I'm gonna go with the under on that one. I don't see there being a huge offensive day for either teams here. So that I reluctantly I'll go on
What
the
about
under.
the side in this game? Who do you think gets it done? New Orleans or Portland?
I think I've got Portland. They're at home. New Orleans isn't that great on the road. Portland, again, they're half a game behind. I think they've got a lot more riding on this game than New Orleans does. So I think I'm going to go with Portland. Portland on this one. But it's definitely not going to be a pretty sight to watch.
Yeah, I don't know if it's worth staying up past your bedtime to stay up and watch this game, but I tend to agree on the side on this one. I am on Portland money line. I think I would play him at -2 as well. The juice has moved a little bit on the money line to where there's probably just better value if you take it -2. The total in this spot, I tend to stay away from totals on the second night of a back-to-back because in the modern NBA, one of two things can happen. One being that the team on the second night of a back-to-back shows very little interest in playing defense, which results in an incredibly high scoring affair. The other thing that can happen is a team's just fatigued, right? You just played an NBA game the night before. The legs might not be there. So even if you're not playing a great defensive team, it can be a situation where it's just tough to knock down open shots. And it can be incredibly frustrating as a bettor if you're watching the game because you're watching these guys take open shot after open shot after open shot, and they can't knock them down because the legs are not there. If you are betting the total in this game, it is worth noting that since January 3rd, these Portland Trailblazers are 29th in the NBA in defensive efficiency, allowing 121.7 points per 100 possessions. The Pelicans have been better, but like we saw earlier, without Zion Williamson in the lineup, they have been below league average on the defensive end of the floor. Also struggled offensively though, right? So 33rd percentile in offensive efficiency. So the under is not dead. It's one of those where it's a little bit of a mixed bag on the total, but Joe and I are aligned on the Trailblazers getting the job done at home tonight. So just to recap, guys, Joe's leans in this spot, looking at Lillard under 34.5 points, Brandon Ingram over 25.5 points, and we are both on the Trailblazers money line in this spot. We think they get the job done at home, despite the fact that they're a little bit thin in the front court. I think it's a spot they get it done. I think it's a spot they get it done. Guys, until next time, please, if you find the content valuable, like, share, subscribe. If you have other thoughts on the game or questions on how we access the information, our approach to betting sides and totals, just hit us with questions in the comments. Happy to reply. Until I see you tomorrow, best of luck on your action, and we'll see you then.